Adventures in Aggeros, Chapter 1. The Invitation of a King. A gust of wind pushed strands of Selina's pale golden hair out of her face. She paid it no mind as she aimlessly cut at splinters of wood on the guardrail. Her offhand ran along the edge of an envelope in her pocket. Her thoughts centered on one line in the letter. The matter to which I write is of an urgent matter which you are uniquely qualified for.
What qualifications was he speaking of?
She pondered. They say it is the richest land in all the world. I'll take all I can and live like a king back in Variel. Selina overheard one of the sailors boasting. Are you known for your plundering? Questioned the large man with a greatsword on his back.
He is not known for anything unlike you,
claimed one sailor in a gruff tone. I am too, whined the first sailor. Back in Grinstall, I would often steal from the priest's wine cellar and sing about it from my porch with the bottles on full display.
It was your mother's porch, not yours. You're barely old enough to piss on your own now.
The group playing cards burst into laughter.
Besides,
the gruff voice said,
you're as much a fool as you are a fibber. That's not why Aggeros is called the richest land in the world.
Selina's interest piqued. She sheathed her dagger, shifted her weight back, and spun around, placing her elbows behind her on the rail to face the group sitting in the center of the deck. The gruff sailor put his cards down on the deck and added more coin to the pile in the center.
It's a land of opportunity. Wild beasts claim much of the woods, plains, and mountains. If you can slay them, you can keep their homes. That is what brings you, is it not, headhunter? Before the large man could respond, another gambling sailor refuted.
I hear stories of the foulness of the maidens.
Every one of them cause men to drool with lust. That's why it's the richest land.
Multiple men garbed in tattered, sweat-stained tunics stood and bellowed their own reasonings. One man thrust a finger at the gruff one's beard, when suddenly the doors to the captain's cavern swung open.
You are all as foolish as the fibber, it would seem.
A striking woman in a shining black dress gown spoke. She was not the captain, this Selina knew, but it appeared she had claimed his quarters. Selina's intrigue grew.
How can you compare us to him?
One sailor said as he threw his last bit of coin into the pot.
Because you all spread misinformation as fact with little knowledge to discern truth from fiction.
The group exchanged puzzling looks. This included the large man with the greatsword who clearly did not belong. Selina smirked and looked over the woman. Her dark, raven-like hair seemed unaffected by the humidity of the ocean.
Then inform them of the truth, Miss Yvain.
The captain strolled to and leaned over the upper guardrail above the door the woman was standing in. Little to nothing distinguished him from his crew beyond his posture. The man looked almost as amused as Selina, or was his look more than amusement? His expression seemed to border on affection.
Magic creates the allure of Aggeros,
the pale woman dressed in darkness said with no acknowledgement of the captain. The man with the great sword's shoulders visibly tightened as he slumped on his comically small stool, reacting to the woman. His distress grew as he realized the game had paused because of her interruption.
What kind of magic?
Enthused the fibber.
Sweet young child, chuckled the woman. No one knows. Few who travel there ever leave, presumably because of the pure splendor around them. And those who have never seem to document their discoveries.
Impossible!
The gruff sailor stood. He was eye level with the woman.
Captain has sailed this route 12 times.
3 previous times only, and I never have been allowed outside of the docks of Brineburn.
The old captain gazed down at the dumbfounded gamblers.
You never asked how much I knew of this land when you came aboard.
Which was mostly true. Selina and maybe this Yvain woman had the wits to question their destination before embarking on such a journey.
It was hard to tell the intelligence the rest of the passengers possessed. Selina spotted a skinny, dirty man slowly reaching into the gambler's pot. Selina had her hand placed on her knife when the skinny man accidentally clicked a few coins in his hand. The large man with the greatsword responded first by hoisting the thief into the air as he stood, his hand gripping just beneath the scrawny man's neck. "Is today the day you wish to die?" the woman with enchanting red eyes said in an almost jesting tone. The huge man was, surprisingly, a full head shorter than Miss Yvain. His nearly bare chest, which was only covered by the straps of the sheath for his sword, seemed to flex out in all directions. His offhand glided underneath the thief's. The coins jingled as they fell.
"No stealing,"
the half-naked man said as he unexpectedly dropped the thief so he landed flat on his stomach. The man with the greatsword returned the coin to the pile and dropped back onto his stool. The pale woman glared at the warrior for a brief second, then turned her gaze to the thief once more. "Lucky, lucky. Norid the headhunter dispatches as much kindness as he does pain. Had that been my coin you stole, I would have charred your hands to the bone." The thief lowered his eyes to his feet as he scurried backwards, apologizing softly. The rest of the gamblers, too, scolded the thief as the headhunter struggled to start the game once again. Selina heard a light buzzing sound to her right. Before her head could turn to see what was causing the noise, she received a fuzzy bump. It was as soft and airy as a fine blanket. Surprisingly, the force did not displace her.
"Dolphins. Look,"
said a nasally voice. Selina looked up and saw a large, striped creature with small wings hovering a few inches above the ground. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. She couldn't tell if she wanted to snuggle the round mass or pop it with her knife.
"They must have a predator near."
Selina turned to the water as dolphins dipped in and out of the waves. They moved in the opposite direction of the ship.
"Do you think we are the predators?"
the nasally voice said, with a hint of guilt in his voice. Selina struggled to think of a response. "If we are," she started, "then they'll be safe. Our course is not the same as theirs." There was, however, a very large number of dolphins, too many to be coincidence. "If it's not us, then I'd rather not find out what they run from," Selina thought.
The
voice hummed. Selina lifted her chin to look up at the floating fuzz. "What is your name?" The voice hummed again. The creature continued to stare at the fleeing animals, his body slowly bobbing up and down in time with them. "Am I being ignored?" Selina thought. "Sorry, but what is your name?" The same response a third time. Excuse me." Selina reached out to nudge the fuzzy creature. Is his name, darling?" the pale woman said, slowly walking towards them. A few of the sailors gawked as the gorgeous woman swayed away from them. "Though, I will admit, I almost didn't believe the rumors about a bee-man either. Greetings to you,
"Nice to meet you,"
the bee mumbled without turning towards her. The woman shifted her attention to Selina. "Meredith Yvain." She extended her hand. Selina grabbed hold. "I know who you are, killer of kings." Selina tried pulling her hand away when their eyes met. "The pleasure is mine." Selina felt very cold. The boat rocked more violently. "How do you—" Selina stammered. "We all have our stories. I make it a habit to know these stories." Meredith smiled a cold smile. "I think our stories are why we're here, voyaging together. Our stories might even be joining." Selina abruptly backed away from the pale woman who knew too much. She instinctively shoved her hands under her arms, trying to feel small, to disappear. She twisted around and looked past him and realized, there's nowhere to hide here. It's too small a space. She continued to stomp away, hoping to prove her observations false. You have the letter, no? Meredith called out. Selina stopped. She looked back over her shoulder. Norid's eyes were fixated on them now. The other gamblers seemed uninterested, though his eyes flipped between Meredith and Selina. Also turned away from the water to look at them. Your story garnered enough grandeur that a foreign land calls to you. Selina struggled to remain silent. She did not trust Meredith, but had so many questions for her. About the letter, about her story. Why was she called? About where she was going. Captain! Selina shouted.
Aye.
Selina moved near the gamblers, underneath the navigation deck, and looked up at the hairy man. What sort of goods do you ferry to this land? What do the people there desire? She felt eyes burning into her back.
I too would like to know this.
Norid spoke from his stool. Hovered over with Meredith. Tell all of us, if you would, Meredith said. The captain smirked and rocked backwards.
All right, then. It will pass the time till we see the shore anyways.
He disappeared behind the deck, his footsteps pulsing through the wood as he made his way down the stairs. Clever questions, clever girl. Selina heard a whisper. She looked back at Meredith, who responded with a confused look. If she didn't whisper, then... Selina knew she had no friends on this voyage.
Mostly, we are bringing alcoholic imports that are only made in other countries.
The captain approached the group. His voice began to transition to noise for Selina. Her left hand twitched slightly as she guided it to rest on her hip near the hilt of her dagger. She tried to sense Meredith's every move. Meredith must have magic in her veins. The odds of even the greatest scholar knowing all she knows is slim. It would also explain her interest in the powers on the island. Selina noted the sailors to her right in the corner of her vision. I highly doubt any of the crew would know telepathy or any kind of magic. If they did, then why waste those powers and work on a boat? Unless the idea was to hide your abilities. But why be so cautious of anyone here? Unless they knew strong travelers would be joining them.
So we supply the rich?
Norid spoke up, breaking Selina's concentration.
Aye, the rich run trade, everyone knows,
the captain replied.
Not always for their own goods. They value coin. Aggeros must have enough food and drink for the commoners if rich men are only bringing in rich food,
Norid added. Which tells us what kind of land we will travel across. There has to be plenty of flat farmlands, at least somewhere on the island. Selina followed upon Norid's observations, looking back to see a slight nod of approval from the headhunter. Meredith's mouth visibly hung open, looking at Norid. Selina supposed she had not thought a brute could make such leaps of logic. But Norid was a hunter. Knowing where you fight your prey is an important step. For good hunters, that is. Selina had heard many stories of famed hunters who courageously charged against beasts, but most of those tales ended in injuries or death.
You're correct, headhunter. I don't believe we are carrying a single common good. We do have a number of clothing items as well, but those are mainly fine silk tunics and queer dresses.
The captain paused. He appeared to be mentally checking through the inventory.
Any animal food?
The giant bee asked.
How can you tell who the food is for by simply looking at it?
The fibber questioned.
Oh, because of these special bags.
The bee revealed a small bag from the pouch on his back. It had the words, "Good food," written across it.
That way, you never accidentally eat the food you were saving for the animals.
Extended the bag out so everyone could see. His face was entirely expressionless.
Not all cases of food are marked as clearly as yours.
The captain's eyes darted up and down the bee, as if he did not know what to look at.
Oh.
The bee's bag rattled softly as it retreated into the pouch that slung across his body. "The people of Aggeros have much to learn from you, Meredith said gently. "I'm sure we all do."
Okay.
The bee responded, still showing little to no emotion. Selina continued to observe him even after the captain began to describe the rest of the contents of the cargo. Something seemed off to her about him, as he was fairly expressive earlier when discussing the dolphins. Why would someone go stone-faced now? Unless they were hiding something. Floated away from the group, clearly not interested in the content of the conversation. Selina was once again aware that she was surrounded by strangers. She shifted back to Norid and kept moving. Her peripheral vision remained focused on
Miss, have you heard all you wish of the treasures we carry?
The captain moved to the side to make eye contact with Selina, who stood behind some crew. They parted to make an alley for her in case she wanted to approach the captain. No, Selina blurted out. "I'm starting to feel sick and was moving towards the rails in case I would rather not get sick on your deck." Selina bowed slightly and excused herself.
"I thank ye for the unnecessary courtesy,"
the captain said. Selina felt Meredith's eyes still upon her as she moved away from the group. A mist of salt water brushed Selina's face as she reached the guard railing. The sun's reflection off the water forced her to squint. She took a deep breath in through her nose and thought about how much better it smelled to be away from the crew. Towards the bow of the ship, she saw His wings continued to flutter, lifting his soft body to the end of the ship. Selina grabbed the rail with her left hand and glanced back at the gathering to her right. It looked as if some sailors were trying to convince the captain to grab some of the drinks down below. Selina chose to ignore them and began to walk towards the bow.
Land,
Stated just before Selina reached him. She gazed at the horizon and saw nothing. "I don't see anything." It was a perfectly clear day, so there was nothing to obscure her vision.
Gah!
Shouted, startled by her response. It took him a second to recognize her.
Oh, it's there. Any second now, the crow's nest will shout down that Aggeros is in sight.
As if on cue, the crow's nest shouted down, "Aggeros is in sight!" All inhabitants of the boat migrated towards him and Selina, the floorboards creaking loudly from their movement. Selina groaned and took a few steps back to avoid being in the front of the crowd. The whole crew began to cheer as the speck that was supposedly Aggeros came into view. The ship rocked towards the distant island.
"Won't be but a few more hours till we're finally at the harbor of Brineburn,"
Selina overheard the captain saying. But something felt wrong to Selina. The island had an aura about it. After staring at the island for a few seconds, a chill traveled down her spine. She shivered as heat suddenly escaped through her skin. Selina turned around, looked up, and saw the clouds beginning to darken rapidly. The ship's consistent teetering ramped up ferociously. Shades slid across the deck and kept extending beyond the boat. Selina caught Norid's eyes as he put his hand on the hilt of his blade. His breath was visible in the air. They both searched to find Meredith. Norid gestured with his head towards the back of the crowd. There Meredith stood. Her face did not hide her surprise. "Like I said, magic courses through this country, and not all magic is good," a voice whispered in Selina's head. Floated towards Selina, pointing out towards the water on her right.
"Luck,"
The water was foaming in a huge circle roughly 1,000 feet away from the ship. The water surrounding it darkened, and a strong current was forming. The mist from the sea quickly transitioned into rain that grew heavier with every passing second. The sailors appeared more startled than afraid. The sudden change in weather was a clear bad omen, but had hit so quickly no one had time to think. Few seemed to notice the strange behavior of the bubbling sea, which held off mass hysteria. But that was about to change. A massive colony of bats erupted from the foaming circle in the sea. They swirled in a tornado-like fashion towards the evil clouds above and disappeared into the sky.
"Captain,"
Norid called out,
"prepare your men for a fight."
He drew his greatsword with one hand and held it at his side so the tip nearly touched the wood of the deck. Selina ran to the other guardrail and pulled out her bow. She then drove 5 arrows at her feet and looked at the approaching foe, pulling her hood up. Meredith dropped her head and stood silent. Heat encapsulated her hands, visibly distorting the air around them. Purple energy covered her hands like a weightless flame. Flew up to the crow's nest, pulling a blow-dart gun from his pouch and readying the first pellet. The crew remained motionless, still in shock. The bat colony burst down from the clouds. They began to descend in an attack formation similar to a warhorse charge.
"Battle stations! Make course directly for the shore. Do not stray from the direct collision with Aggeros without my say-so."
The captain began leading his sailors to various parts of the ship as they scrambled. Many of them tripped over themselves in a rush.
"These are no ordinary animals,"
Shouted down from atop the crow's nest. His fuzzy coat was flattened by the rain.
"All bats are the same when they are cut into pieces,"
Norid said as he beat his chest with his non-sword hand, unleashing his inner fury. Selina waited. The rain seemed to float down. Her controlled breathing drowned out all sound. She kept calculating the distance between her and the bats. As soon as they were within range, she took a quick breath, raised her bow, nocked an arrow, and let loose. The arrow cut through the rain, landing in the abdomen of the front bat. The 2 bats immediately behind it were also struck. A bolt of lightning flashed across the air. Selina watched it branch out through the sky, connecting with 2 bats, singeing off their wings. Selina was not distracted, though, and did little waiting. She readied her next arrow and let loose. She had gotten 5 shots off by the time the creatures swarmed the boat. Norid launched himself off the rail and reached for the nearest bat with his sword. He let out a battle cry as he landed and charged in for another strike. Selina threw her bow over her shoulder, brushing her hair aside. She revealed her 2 short swords and planted her feet. A group of 5 bats swooped down to attack her. She slid to the side and swiped at the group, avoiding the attack while cutting one in half. A bat flopped to the ground from above. Selina covered her eyes and looked up. She saw cracking a whip at a group of bats. The bee floated around, catching enemies attacking others by surprise. Selina saw a crewman struggling to keep the sail intact. 4 bats clawed at him. The blood that flowed down his body was hastened by the rain, crashing against his skin. Before Selina could move towards to help him, Norid was there. He grunted and sliced, causing bits of bats to fly across the ship. He too was covered in blood, but it was hard to tell if any of it was his. The swarm that had originally attacked Selina came around for a second time. She was not able to completely dodge them and was scratched across her face. Her blades did take out 3 of the foes, which she thought was a fair trade. The boat swayed furiously to the right, causing Selina to lose her center of balance and crash onto her knees and elbows.
"What is that?"
someone screamed. Selina looked up in time to see Meredith twist around and look at the sea. Horror appeared on her face. The emotion looked wrong somehow, like Meredith had not felt it in some time. Selina pushed up to get herself back onto her feet. She followed Meredith's eyes to see a large vortex of water roaring near the ship. An incredibly massive bubble was forming in the center of the vortex. It then grew, and Selena realized it was rising from the sea.
Kraken!
The captain yelled. Tentacles emerged in all directions from the center of the rising beast. Water slid off the white, glossy tentacles and boiled when it rejoined the sea. The torso of the kraken was now exposed, its dark, black eyes looking directly at the ship as its arms stretched out and up, revealing its gray underside. Lightning flashed, making the bright white skin of the kraken glow. It towered over the ship, eye level with the top of the sails. "A white kraken?" Selena said to no one in particular. "I think we may have found the reason for our invitation," Meredith responded. "Our invitation?" Selena thought. The kraken threw its arms down, hurled its torso towards them, sinking into the newly formed wave.
"Time we leave."
Nord appeared between the two women and pointed towards the shore.
You expect me to swim to the island and leave all of my things?
Meredith said, looking down slightly at the warrior.
"Or you can stay and die,"
Norid said and darted towards the end of the boat, not looking behind to see if they followed. He gestured to crew, encouraging them to abandon ship. A white bolt of lightning flashed, lighting up the sky. In it, Selena saw an object far in the distance. "Is that? Selena gestured to get Meredith's attention.
"It would appear so. Seems as though he had the same thoughts as the brute,"
Meredith relinquished with a sigh.
"Let's go, Killer of Kings."
"Wait! There's something I need!" Selena started towards the stairs, but then froze. The captain was in the center of the deck, sobbing while cradling a dead crew member.
"Please, not my ship.
Not my crew. Please."
Selena turned towards the ocean and saw the massive wave was nearly here. The kraken submerged itself inside. Only its eyes, black, dark, and endless, could be seen.
"Is this where you want to die?"
Meredith called as she ran. Selena glanced back at her.
"There is so much more to your story."
"Worry about your own story!" Selena snapped back and rushed down the stairs, leaving Meredith back in the rain. Selena only managed to take a few steps when she was thrown into the air, smashing against a wooden pillar. Her back strained in pain as splinters of wood ingrained themselves into her face. The hole had 4 large holes in the side of it where it was rammed. Clothes, food, and gems were scattered around her, most of them heavily damaged. Selena pushed herself up quickly but collapsed in pain. She groaned as she rested on her elbows and knees. "Where is my chest?" she cried out. Selena then heard a loud crack. The floor caved in slightly as she heard 2 more cracks in succession. A tentacle was now covering one of the fresh holes.
"Gods, it's going to crush the entire ship!"
Selena forced herself up, grinding her teeth through the pain. She spotted an opening on the far end of the room that was not yet covered by the kraken. Selena pushed her legs against the ground, grunting every time her left leg had to support her. The wood frame gave another loud crack, and Selena began to run faster and faster. She kept her eyes down, hoping she might come across her belongings in the mess. Suddenly, the floor fell behind her, causing her to drop. She caught herself with her right hand on a heavy chest, barely losing stride. It was after that she gave up looking for her belongings and completely focused on the hole in the wall. When she reached it, she launched herself through the opening just in time for the ship to finally give in to the kraken's strength. Selena gracefully transformed her leap into a dive and managed to enter the water away from the debris. She let gravity take her deep into the water, avoiding the falling wreckage. She twirled around to make sure nothing had chased her down. When she looked up, she saw wounded crew struggling to stay afloat on the surface. Bats swooped down and scratched at them. "Fall into the water!" Selena wanted to tell them, but they didn't. They panicked and swiped at the bats, only to begin flailing again to stay afloat, when they dipped further into the ocean. Selina knew if she helped them, they could possibly kill her along with themselves. She began turning her arms to swim when a sparkle caught her eye. My mother's necklace? The hope filled her thoughts. But it was not what she was searching for. The bottom of the kraken had gems embedded along it. Bright red gems, even brighter than the kraken's white skin. Selina was fixated on the red gems, and it took her a moment to notice how incredibly large the kraken was. It must have been 5 times bigger underwater than above. It could have taken on a dozen ships at once and crushed them all in a matter of minutes. What am I doing here? I have to move! She broke her gaze from the monster and swam hard away from the ship. She ran out of breath sooner than she hoped, and swam for the surface, unsure if she had made it far enough. The cold air welcomed her face and filled her lungs, forcing her to cough painfully. It seemed much colder than when she was on the ship. She took a quick look behind her and saw no pursuers. The kraken had lifted the ship, ready to crush it a second time. Selina turned away from the chaos and saw that she was fortunate. She had already been swimming towards the shore. It was still a long, long distance away. Selina noticed a dark figure a few waves in front of her. Seeing Meredith brought her some sense of relief, though she was not sure if it should. Selina also saw much further in the distance. He appeared to be halfway there, but was significantly closer to the water than when she had originally saw him from the deck. Selina tried to look back one more time, but her back spasmed, forcing her head to stay forward. I guess I'm going this way. Selina swam away from the kraken, the dying crew, and all the possessions that held her to her previous life.